Shalom, welcome to the Jewish Task Force, J.T.F. My name is Chaim Ben Pesach, and we have another program with the great David Ben Moshe. On this program, we're going to give you specific examples of people who were murdered in cold blood because of Kamala Harris's reign as district attorney in San Francisco. She's responsible for people being murdered because she let people off the hook who went out and committed terrible murders. We're going to give you two very notorious examples to show what a nightmare it will be if Kamala Harris, God forbid, is elected president of the United States. And hopefully we'll have time also to discuss the latest with the sanctions against the Hilltop youth and the latest actions that Kamala Harris and the late Joe Biden are taking against Israel, as always, and why on that issue as well, it's essential that we elect Donald Trump and defeat Kamala Harris. But before we get to that, this program is dedicated to a refuah shlema, complete recovery, for Sharon Mitman, Shlomo ben Sarah, Dorit bat Sarah, Reuven ben Shoshana, and Ruth bat Sarah, and to Ilui Neshamot, elevating of the souls, for Hadassah bat Yitzchak, Malka bat Meir, Allegra bat Shlomo, Daniel Nankin, Victor Chazdai, Pesach Seb Ben Dov, Lunita Adler, Shifra Hoffman, Reuven Hoffman, Barry Hoffman, Rab Mir Kahana, Rab Benjamin Kahana, Tzipora Fegi Bat Liba, Yosef Ben Meir, Robert Mittman, Dennis Shore, Helen Friedman, Charles Zolat, and Yair Levine. One of the issues which they're trying to use to elect Kamala Harris to the presidency, and they've started a $50 million advertising campaign just on this issue, is how she was a prosecutor. She was a tough prosecutor. They don't give any specific examples of where she was a tough prosecutor, because she never was. She was never a tough prosecutor. She believed, and still believes, that it's racist to put black murderers and rapists in prison. That's racist. She thinks they should be let go. And I'm not exaggerating. In 2005, Kamala Harris, the district attorney of San Francisco, released from prison Dwayne Reed. And Dwayne Reed is not the Dwayne Reed. His name is Dwayne Reed. I don't know why they named him that. I know there's a Dwayne Reed, the drugstore chain. But this is someone whose name is Dwayne Reed. She released him from prison, a murderer. She released him from prison. He had 6 prior felony convictions. And then he went out and murdered the son of California's Secretary of State. Murdered his son in cold blood. In 2006, Devendra Broussard, don't ask me how to, the crazy spelling of this name. He's a black murderer. The crazy spelling of the name, don't ask me how to spell the name, but it's Devendra Broussard. He assaulted and robbed a train passenger brutally, and seriously injuring this train passenger, terrorizing him and brutally injuring him. Robbed him, assaulted him, and then sadistically beat on him after robbing him. Kamala Harris gave him probation, recommended probation for him, and he got probation. Kamala Harris, the DA, recommending probation. And by the way, in all of these cases, the victims' families were outraged. They were saying, how can you do this? Kamala Harris ignored all of that. It's racist. She gave him probation. A year later, in 2007, Broussard murdered the editor of the Oakland Post, Chauncey Bailey. These are just 2 examples of why San Francisco, when Kamala Harris first became district attorney, before she was district attorney, downtown San Francisco had a 98% occupancy rate. In other words, the office buildings and the commercial spaces in downtown San Francisco were 98% occupied, rented. It was one of the most desirable and expensive places in the world, not just in the United States, but in the world, to have a business and rent space there. That's before she became DA of San Francisco.
San
Today,
Francisco is known for multicolor buildings. It was like a show place for the United States. San Francisco was the place for tourists to go.
yes. And, I mean, I've never been to San Francisco, but I've been to Southern California, but I've never been to San Francisco. But I would assume that it was a very beautiful city from the pictures and everything else that you see. Now, remember, 98% of the offices were occupied in San Francisco when she became DA. Today, 50% vacancy rate. 50% of their offices are unoccupied, are vacant. The whole city's economy is collapsing. Nobody wants to go downtown, which was, again, one of the most expensive and desirable places. Their rent there was almost as expensive as rent in Midtown Manhattan. That means among the most expensive rents that you could find in the world.
Look at all the lost jobs and the lost tax revenue.
I mean, but can you imagine a downtown area where 50% of the offices are vacant? And, California has super high taxes. So that means these building owners, many of them are abandoning the buildings. They can't pay the rent. They can't pay the taxes. They can't pay the property taxes. They can't keep the buildings anymore because they have vacancies. They just can't keep up with it. So you have abandoned buildings, boarded up buildings, and vacancy after vacancy after vacancy. The majority of San Francisco's restaurants have closed down. People don't want to go to the restaurant anymore in downtown San Francisco. They're afraid they're going to be shot to death by the people that Kamala Harris let out as district attorney. I mean, she destroyed the city of San Francisco. Her and then Willie Brown, whom she had an affair with Willie Brown. She was sleeping with him. He was 31 years older than her. She was sleeping with him, and he bought her a BMW and gave her a very, very well-paying job in the city government, and then supported her in the primary for district attorney. And she got that by sleeping with him, by going to bed with him. That's the type of person you're dealing with. And she did that not just with Willie Brown, she did it with others as well, on her way up the ladder. And then she became Attorney General of California. She did the same thing to the whole state of California that she did in San Francisco. She created prison policies and arrest policies and tying the hands of the police all over the state of California. She did everything she could to release murderers and rapists and drug dealers and gang leaders, to put them back on the street, especially if they were black, because she felt that putting black people in prison is racist. Doesn't matter what they're doing. By the way, this Broussard, who Harris got probation for, and who went on to murder Chauncey Bailey. Chauncey Bailey is black. The victims, most of the victims of the murderers that Kamala Harris released from prison, most of their victims were black. You see, the difference between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump will focus on the rights of the victims of crime. Kamala Harris focuses on the so-called rights of the murderers and the rapists and the drug dealers, who really should have no rights at all. They don't deserve any rights. This is what she has done to San Francisco. This is what she's done to California. And she promises to do to the whole country what she did there. She points to her record there and says, look at this. This is what if I'm president, you can expect me to do this nationally. And believe me, this will set the tone nationally, because national prison policy, when the Federal Bureau of Prisons sets sentencing guidelines, most of the 50 states follow the guidelines and are heavily influenced by what Washington sets as the sentencing guidelines. The states are heavily influenced by that. They shouldn't be, but they are. And if you think there's a lot of crime now, if you think it's dangerous now, you put this left-wing lunatic in the White House, whose father was a Jamaican communist, was an open communist. He openly had speaking dates. He was referred to as the Marxist professor. Her father was an open communist. And she said that her father had a deep influence on her thinking. Obviously he did, because look at her now. She's a Marxist also. You would put someone like this in the White House when America is at this tipping point in history? What do you think is going to happen to the country? What do you think the effect will be for the country if you put her in charge? She was the border czar, and she let 20 million illegal aliens stampede into the country and destroy America's cities. She was the border czar. She's responsible for the fentanyl, the drugs, the massive increase in crime since she took office. Now she says she has solutions for all. She has solutions. Why does she do it? Why doesn't she do it now? She's in office now together with the late Joe Biden. Why hasn't she done it for the past 4 years? They've been in office. She runs as if she's running for the first time. She's proposing this and propose. What are you proposing things? You've been in office for 4 years. Why didn't you do it already for the past 4 years? Why are you proposing that if I'm elected, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that? Why aren't you doing it for the past 4 years? And
She's
remember
the one
that
that's probably running the country now too, because Joe Biden is nowhere to be seen. He's jumping from one vacation to the next.
Joe Biden has been on vacation for years. I mean, he's the late Joe Biden is gone. And she doesn't have the brains to actually run the country, but she does make sure that the people who are running the country are doing what she wants. And she hates white people. And she hates Jews. Even though her husband's a self-hating Jew, her husband, that makes her even more anti-Semitic. Her husband is also an anti-Semite. Her daughter-in-law, the daughter of a Jewish Hollywood attorney. He's an attorney for the Hollywood stars. Doug Emhoff. I represent the stars and the movie stars in Hollywood. Oh, that's great to have that in the White House as the husband of the president. That would be just a self-hating Jew who represents Hollywood, the Drek of Hollywood. That would be wonderful to have that in the White House. What a dream come true to put that in charge of the country. And his daughter raised $8 million for a Hamas front group and raises money. She's one of the internet influencers. You know, all these internet sites censor and ban conservatives and people who dare to say anything that's politically incorrect, supposedly. But she's allowed to promote Hamas front groups. She's allowed to promote the Black Lives Matter and all these other groups that are openly anti-Semitic and openly racist. She promotes it. Her daughter-in-law raises money for the demonstrators on college campuses who burn American flags and burn Israeli flags and chant death to Israel and call for genocide against the Jewish people. You have had cases of self-hating Jewish professors at these universities who are against Israel themselves, who are also against Israel. They hate Israel too because they're scum. They're low-life scum. And even these self-hating Jewish professors who are anti-Israel were physically attacked because they're Jews. They were physically attacked by these mobs on the college campuses that Kamala Harris's daughter-in-law is raising money for and supports. And Kamala Harris herself supports them. Even the late Joe Biden at the Democrat convention in his speech said, they have a good point. They make a point. They make a good point. The demonstrators who are chanting death to Israel and burn American and Israeli flags, they have a good point. And who support Hamas and have flags. They have the Hamas flags. American flags they burn. Israeli flags, they burn. Hamas flags, they wave. And the flags of the PLO and all these terrorist organizations, they wave. And they get their money to do all of this from Kamala Harris's daughter-in-law, from her family. And Kamala Harris's daughter-in-law was at the convention. She was smiling. She was in the front seat there. And Kamala Harris acknowledged her. And Kamala Harris has adopted her. Kamala Harris, because she's from from Doug Emhoff's previous hideous marriages. And she was at the convention, and she was a VIP, this filthy beast. And if you recall, when Kamala Harris, in her acceptance speech, she said that she will always be concerned about Israel's right to defend itself. And she got a very light applause for that at the convention, a few people. Then she said, and she will always support the right of the Palestinian people to self-determination. Then the convention, there was, just an explosion of applause and cheers. And they are such Jew haters. They are so committed to destroying Israel. They are so hungry. They're so thirsty for Jewish blood, including Doug Emhoff and his daughter and the self-hating Jews at that convention, and Schmuck Schumer, Yimach Shmo B'Zichro, that what a schmuck. All of them. And you would vote for this? This is who you would vote for? Now, I'm not a fan of Donald Trump, and I don't trust Donald Trump, and I think we may have a lot of problems with him if he becomes president again. And we had a lot of problems with him when he was president. I don't trust him, and his so-called peace plan in the Middle East would be terrible for Israel. God forbid that it should ever come into being. But he did not impose sanctions on all of our people in Judea and Samaria. Kamala Harris and her administration, they're imposing sanctions on all the key Hilltop youth people, on all... By the way, they say they're imposing sanctions on those who are standing in the way of a Palestinian terrorist state, who are not allowing the Arabs to take over Judea and Samaria so there could be a Palestinian terrorist state. Isn't it amazing? Almost everybody who's been sanctioned is either with the Hilltop youth or working with the Hilltop youth or associated with the Hilltop youth. Isn't that amazing? They're the ones who are preventing a Palestinian state, just so that you'll know. They're the ones being sanctioned, and they're the ones who, the American anti-Semites at the State Department, all these left-wing anti-Semites at the State Department, and anti-Semites like Kamala Harris, or like Antonin Blinken, the so-called Secretary of State, who's another self-hating Jew. All of these lowlifes, they identify the Hilltop youth as the problem. And they're right. The Hilltop youth are the ones preventing a so-called Palestinian state from coming into being. These heroes are standing in the way and protecting Israel and the whole Jewish people from that nightmare. And so we have to stop Kamala Harris from getting elected president, because if she's elected, she's going to slap sanctions on everybody in Judea and Samaria, and she's going to create a massive international coalition to pressure and squeeze and blackmail Israel to commit suicide, to create a Palestinian terrorist state. She's openly saying so. She even said in her acceptance speech, self-determination means a Palestinian terrorist state. And there are no Palestinians, and there is no Palestine. That's a historic lie. But they'll create this fake a state based on a fake identity. They'll create this state as a launching pad to destroy Israel, and Israel will be 6 to 9 miles wide. That, God forbid, is the nightmare that we're going to get if Kamala Harris is elected president. And those of you, and women are going to be proud because it's going to have the first woman president. Oh, come on. Women out there will not be able to walk the streets. You won't be able to walk the streets, and boy, will you regret having voted for her. If you vote for her, first of all, you deserve whatever you get if you vote for her. I hope bad things happen to you if you vote for her. And you deserve all the bad things that can happen to you if you vote for this beast, and you don't care about the survival of Israel, and you don't care about all the injustice that she stands for. If you're going to vote for that, you deserve whatever you get. And by the way, for the American people, for America, if America elects this beast, America deserves whatever America gets. If you're going to elect her, polls show she has a lead now against Trump. It's a slight lead, but she's still ahead in the polls, in most of the polls. This is what Americans want to vote for, and they voted for Barack Hussein Osama twice and made him president twice, and she's reconstructing the coalition that elected him twice. I mean, this is what you're voting for? You're voting for someone who, again, look at her judgment. Just think about this. Just think about this. I know most of you are not attorneys and you're not district attorneys, but if you had someone like Dwayne Reed who committed murder and who had 6 prior felony convictions for violent crimes, 6 prior felony convictions for violent crimes.
What was he doing that on the street?
Against innocent people. She put him on the street. She released him from prison, she released him from prison and put him on the street. And then he went out and committed murder again. And murdered not only that, he murdered the reason it became famous is because he murdered the son of the Secretary of State of California, who, by the way, a left-wing Democrat. One of the people who was all for, oh, yes, defund the police, prisons are racist, Black Lives Matter. He wound up getting, and in the end, he wound up getting murdered by one of the people that he supported. Him and his son supported. His son was murdered. I mean, you would put someone who releases someone with 6 prior felony convictions for violent crime, a murderer, and releases them on the street so that he goes out and commits murder again. You don't realize what putting someone like that in the White House as president of the United States will mean? You don't understand how dangerous that is? You would put someone like that in the office of the presidency? Or someone who takes Devondre Broussard, the other example here, gives him probation in a case which got, I mean, it was all over the news. He brutally assaulted this passenger. Passenger was 57 years old. And he was, I think, 22 or 23. And he brutally assaulted him, beat him and assaulted him and kicked him in the face and kicked him in the ribs and stomped on him. I mean, brutally assaulted this guy. After robbing him, it wasn't enough that he robbed him. He sadistically kept assaulting him and beating him until he thought the police were coming, and then he ran away. And the guy was lucky that if he had continued for another few minutes, the guy might have been crippled or dead. And then she releases it. She gives him probation. She gives a monster like this probation. And then a year later, surprise, surprise, he goes out and murders the editor of the Oakland Post, which is the biggest newspaper in Oakland, California. Shoots him to death. Chauncey Bailey shoots him to death on the street. You would put someone who does this in the White House as president of the United States? How crazy has this country become? By the way, David, let me ask you, because you're an objective, impartial observer. If we put someone like this with this record in the White House, do you think America has a chance?
No, if you remember, Ronald Reagan changed federal sentencing guidelines to increase them quite a bit, and a lot of states followed. They took a lot of evil people off the streets. Of course, it didn't take much time for left-wingers to get in there and put them back on the streets. But you can't have this. If you remember, Tim Walz was celebrating when Black Lives Matter was burning down his state of Minnesota. It was Kamala Harris who released all the people that lit the matches. She raised money for their bail. You can't have something like this in the White House. Unfortunately, never underestimate the ignorance of the American electorate. When John Lindsay was mayor of New York City, he was a liberal, ultra-liberal Republican. He ended up a Democrat, but it just shows how interchangeable the two parties are. This woman said, I'm voting for John Lindsay because he's so handsome. Is that a reason to vote for somebody? When Mario Cuomo was governor, he was destroying New York State. this Italian woman. Italians are always conservative, almost always. She said, I'm going to vote for him because he's Italian, even though I don't agree with any of his policies. And of course, Schmuck Schumer, when he was a congressman running for the Senate against Al D'Amato, a conservative Italian who was very pro-Israel, Schumer said, I can't do what Al D'Amato's doing for Israel. And still the Jews voted for Schumer. So the ignorance in this country is just beyond belief. And I'm not even talking about educated ignorance, education. I'm talking about common sense. As Rabbi Kahana used to say, common sense is uncommon. And that's America.
And by the way, just to give you an example of how shockingly insane people are, polls, almost all the polls, including the left-wing polls, show that an overwhelming majority of Americans agree that inflation was better under Donald Trump. The economy was better under Donald Trump. Crime was lower under Donald Trump. Everything was better. The border situation was better under Donald Trump, much better under Donald Trump. Americans agree when they ask who is better and who do you think is better on these issues? They ask, well, who will be better on the economy, Donald Trump or Kamala Harris? And Americans, the majority of Americans in poll after poll say Donald Trump will be better on the economy. Donald Trump will be better on the border. Donald Trump will be better on inflation. Donald Trump will be better on crime. And yet, in the same poll, Kamala Harris has a lead in the polls. Why? Because they don't like the way Donald Trump tweets or speaks. Will you get, I'm trying to control myself and not say something, that I'll regret. But because some of you just annoy the hell out of me. Just annoy the living hell out of me. I mean, how stupid can anybody be? I mean, you don't like what he tweets because he tweeted something that was politically incorrect. And that's the reason why you're going to allow tens of millions of people to flood across the border? And you're going to allow someone who lets murderers and rapists out to come out and to attack you and your daughters and your wives and your children? You're going to allow that to happen because you didn't like the way Donald Trump tweets because he doesn't have a nice personality? I mean, this is beyond stupid. Beyond stupid.
Well, Europe warned the masses are too stupid to select their own leaders. And we're proving that true every single day.
Who warned that?
Europe, when we were creating this country.
Oh,
because they were all under monarchies.
The founding fathers warned that if they weren't smart enough and worthy enough that this is going to happen. The founding fathers were concerned also about this. And the nightmare is certainly coming true. The nightmare is coming true. I mean, this is just, I'll tell you the truth. I don't see a way out of this if she wins. I don't see any way out of this. If she wins, I don't see how you get out from under all of this. Because America is at such a bad point now, and you see what they're doing now. Look what they're doing by executive order. The late Joe Biden is legalizing a lot of illegal aliens by executive order now. He's saying if they're married to a spouse or they're living with an American who's an American citizen. So in other words, they get one American citizen, they pay them off in some cases. And then they bring their whole family here saying, well, I'm living with an American citizen, And Joe Biden is putting them on the path to citizenship for when they do this. You don't realize they're on the path to citizenship. Tens of millions will be on the path to citizenship very quickly, very quickly. And she is obsessed about promoting this because, of course, she wants the Democrats to have, if that happens, the Democrats will rule forever. Left-wing socialist Marxist Democrats like her will be in charge forever if this happens. In California, they have not elected a Republican for decades, except for Arnold Schwarzenegger, who wasn't a Republican. Arnold Schwarzenegger, for instance, who supports Democrats. He was a so-called Republican who supports he endorsed all the Democrats. In other words, he wasn't a Republican. That's the only type of Republican they would even consider voting for. He was elected governor 20 years ago. But for almost 30 years now, they have not elected, and they have many offices, statewide offices in California. I think they have 6 or 7, Secretary of State, Attorney General, Governor, Lieutenant Governor, and so on. I don't know what else they have. But no statewide, a Republican hasn't even come close to winning a state, and U.S. Senate, 2 U.S. Senate seats. No Republican has come even close to winning in California for decades. For decades. In other words, the state is like a one-party monolith. It's like the Soviet Union. You have one party and that's it. One party rule in California.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's a communist state.
And the same thing in New York. One party rule in New York. And you're going to have this nationally. Nationally. Will America have any chance at all if this happens nationally? None. None. I don't see, there's no way out if that happens. There's no way out. It's over if that happens. And I'm not saying Donald Trump, again, Ron DeSantis and Ted Cruz would have been much better as president. Those two are, first of all, they would have been better candidates, and they know how to get the job done as president. They would have been much better than Donald Trump. It was very foolish and stupid of Republicans to elect. The Republicans allowed the left-wing news media to tell them who their candidate is going to be. The media was supporting Trump for the nomination. Then after he gets the nomination, they turn against him. The media supported McCain for the nomination, and the brilliant Republicans went along with it and nominated McCain. They voted for him in the primaries. Romney they supported. Bush they supported. All these unbelievable, horrible establishment scum. And the Republican voters go and nominate and vote for them against better candidates that they could have supported. And they did the same thing with Trump. Trump was promoted by the media day and night. You remember wall-to-wall coverage of his campaign, and Ted Cruz came in second and ran an excellent campaign. Ted Cruz is a brilliant politician, but
and a brilliant speaker,
and a brilliant debater, but he couldn't overcome the media wall-to-wall and the idiocy of Republicans going along with Trump and believing Trump. But anyway, now we have Trump. He's the last chance to prevent completely closing the door on America's future. He's the last chance. And as far as Israel is concerned, again, the danger is very great for Israel. And the fact, speaking of Israel, the fact that the Biden-Harris administration focuses on the Hilltop youth, and they're openly, and the European Union, the same thing. All their sanctions are against the Hilltop youth. All their against this group of underfunded young heroes who have taken to the hilltops in order to prevent the Arab Muslim Nazi terrorists from taking over that land. And they're the one thing, they are the one thing saving Israel. They need our support. If you want Israel to survive, if you care about Israel and you want Israel to survive and you love Israel, they need our support. And there's no cause more just than the cause of the Hilltop youth. There's no cause more noble than the cause of the Hilltop youth. There's no cause more blessed than the cause of the Hilltop youth. They are really David against Goliath. Here's how you help the heroic Hilltop youth. You can go to our Hebrew main page, hayamin.org, and you click on the donate button. Even though the page is in Hebrew, the donate button is in English on top, the big donate button in English on top. Click on it. In several minutes, you can very easily and conveniently donate to the Hilltop youth. That's online. If you want to donate through the regular mail, you send checks and money orders made out to J.T.F., and you send it to J.T.F. P.O. Box 650327, Fresh Meadows, New York 11365. This is your chance to do something really good. Why wouldn't you want to do something good with your life? Why wouldn't you want to show that you're in this world to do good and to influence for something good? You know, I'm just going to tell one quick story before we go to David. Recently, I met with a very wealthy Jew, very, very wealthy. and wasn't easy. And I didn't meet with him in person. I met with him online. He wouldn't meet with me in person, but I met with him online. And he agreed with everything I was saying about the Hilltop Youth. And he's someone who knows Israel and has traveled to Israel, has businesses in Israel. He has businesses in Israel, United States, Europe, all over the world, Asia, all over the world. But he knows Israel. He's familiar with Israel. And he gives money to charities in Israel, charities that aren't worth anything. They're, that have Arabs there, they hire Arabs and they help the enemy and they're politically correct. I mean, they're giving to that charity. You might as well donate to Hamas. You might as well join Kamala Harris's daughter-in-law and donate to Hamas. But anyway, he gives to charities in Israel, bad ones. And he agreed with everything I was saying. And he knew that the Hilltop Youth, he knew about the Hilltop Youth. He said, you're right. He said, they're the only hope for Israel. They're the only ones doing the right thing now. They are so courageous and so noble. He said, I agree with everything you're saying. Everything you're saying is true. But he wouldn't give us a contribution. Why? Because his friends, he said, but, I travel in certain circles on Wall Street and among certain people. What would they say? You're giving to the Hilltop Youth? That's the extreme right. You can't give to the Hilltop Youth. They're extreme right-wingers. First of all, there's nothing extreme about them. It's baloney. And I told him that, and he agreed that they're not really extreme, that what they're doing is just patriotic Israeli sanity. Sanity, what they're doing, preventing Israel from committing suicide. He agreed with me. But he said, but they're considered to be extreme right-wing by the establishment people, by the billionaires and the people that he goes around with on Wall Street. By the way, he is a billionaire. And he agreed with me that he agreed with me that they're wrong, but he said, but everybody, what would they say about me? He's afraid, maybe he's afraid. I said, well, you afraid they're not going to do business with you anymore? He said, no, they need my business. They'll do business with me. I said, so in other words, the only thing you're afraid of is that they may say something at the cocktail party. They may say something about you. Ooh, he supports the Hilltop Youth. Ooh, that's what you're worried about? He said, well, for me, that's very important. I said, you earned all this money. And God gave you all this power to do so much good. And instead of doing good, you're worried about what they're going to say about you at the cocktail party, more worried than about the survival of Israel. Every single day, Jewish soldiers are dying, are being murdered in Gaza. Every day. 100,000 Jews are refugees in Israel now from the north because of Hezbollah. They don't live in their homes. Their homes have been obliterated by Hezbollah's missiles. And the state of Israel is in danger as never before. And you're worried about what they're going to say about you at the cocktail party when you have so much money and so much power and so much security and can do so much good. This is what you're worried about? But that's what he's worried about. He didn't give me the contribution in the end. He didn't. I mean, he blessed me and told me, I hope you succeed. Good luck. I hope you succeed. You're doing great work. Oh, how nice. How nice of him. So that's where we are. And it's tragic, but true. And I hope that I'll meet other wealthy Jews with the ability to help, and that this time they will decide to help, because helping the Hilltop Youth, that's how you change history. You can literally change history. You have the ability to change history by helping the Hilltop Youth. Literally. David?
Well, Louisiana had a statue of one of the greatest Americans of all time, and it was taken down. The statue was Robert E. Lee. And they put up a new statue, and it's supposedly the devil. It's got a goat's head with horns, and whiskers, but a human body. That's how many Americans perceive the devil to look. So they took down Robert E. Lee and replaced it with the devil. And that's in Louisiana. Imagine what they would do in far left states. Meanwhile, a Denver congresswoman said whites only should pay taxes. Of course, she's not white. I'll leave it to your imagination what she is. But whites only. I think Kamala Harris should look into her as one of her cabinet members if she gets elected. And I have something here that I don't even know if Chaim's aware. Since October 7th, American Jews have seen what happened in Israel. And we know how American Jews support Israel. And they've seen what's going on in college campuses and in our streets with protests and some violence. So American Jews have been buying guns at greater rates than ever before. Even left-wing Jews, Democrat Jews on the far left, 20% of them have been purchasing guns now. And Orthodox Jews have always never said a bad word about guns. They just felt they didn't need them. But they do now, and Orthodox Jews are buying guns in droves. And I have a picture here. I hope you could see it. I don't want to move it too close because it goes out of focus. Rabbi Yossi Balfour and Yehuda Remer are NRA licensed gun instructors. And the bottom corner picture, if you can see him teaching Jews to shoot. And business has never been so brisk. I think they're in California, the two of them. And Yehuda Remer is wearing a shirt that says, people that carry ARs don't end up in cattle cars. And these two guys have always been for defense. The rabbi is also a licensed MMA fighter because he likes to mix it up. So not every Jew runs and hides when it thunders. And because of what's going on, less and less are. And they're finally realizing they're going to have to defend themselves because the police can't be everywhere. And even if they're with you, they're not with you on your side. If you're attacked, they'll let the attacker go because it's a pro-Palestinian or pro-Hamas or pro-Hezbollah. And Jews now, even teachers, are being banned from entering their college classes, not because they're afraid what's going to happen to them, because the universities, which are all left-wing and all Democrats, they're all anti-Jewish. They hate Jews. I'm not going to say anti-Semitic. That's too mild a term. They hate Jews and are glad to see what's happening to them. So Jews better learn to defend themselves. Even if you're a far left-winger, at least go out and find out what your local laws are and fill out whatever papers you have. Through the Brune decision of a couple of months ago, you're allowed to carry in any state. Of course, if it's a Democrat state, they ignore Supreme Court rulings or at the very least pass laws to get around them. But in theory, you're allowed to carry in any state now because of the Supreme Court decision in the Bruen case, except like in New York, they're passing laws to get around it. California, not as severe as New York, but they too are passing laws to get around it.
I don't want anybody to get in trouble because of what we're saying here.
No, you find out what your local laws are.
In New York and believe me, in New York and California, if you don't have a license in New York City, they will put you in prison for that. And by the way, on that, DAs like Kamala Harris are tough. Against law-abiding citizens who want to protect themselves, then the DA who lets all the murderers out and all the rapists, then they suddenly become tough.
Same thing with the police. If you defend yourself, it's 50-50 whether you're going to face charges or not. This is insanity. This is a nation gone insane. I think it's actually too stupid to survive. It's too stupid to deserve to survive. And then a woman I know very well, who always watches our shows, sent me, I guess, little funny things, and some of them not so funny. Maybe meant to be funny, but they're so true. And I want to read some of them to you. The biggest scam in life is paying taxes on money you earn, taxes on money you spend, taxes on things you own that you already paid taxes on with already taxed money. Then we defeated the greatest army in the world, the British, just to go back to the government ruling over our everyday lives. This one is meant to be funny, but it's very poignant. The doctor says to his patient, "Sir." The patient says, "It's ma'am." So the doctor says, "Well, ma'am, you have prostate cancer." And if you remember, Hollywood celebrities a while back got their kids, I guess, paying money under the table, which in Washington, D.C. is called lobbying. Anywhere else it's called payola or something like that. But if you cheat getting into America, they will let you go to college and assist your college funding. Let that sink in. And this is America. Why do I have to press 1 for English? Did America move? And here's another one. A woman asked the doctor, "Is it a boy or a girl?" The doctor says, "We'll let the kindergarten teacher decide." And here's one. I wish this wasn't true. I have solar panels on my roof, 25 panels, and I still pay a fortune for electricity. But on these hot summer days, especially in states like California, especially California, you are told to lower your air conditioning settings or you'll blow the electric grid. Meanwhile, they want you to drive electric cars on a hot summer day. How are you going to charge your car if you can't even run your air conditioning? They have to bring these standards up. Also now, burning a gay flag is a hate crime. However, burning the American flag is free speech. Let that sink in. Here's one that applies to certain groups in our country and to Muslims attacking Israel. No matter how kind and generous you are, you can never satisfy the ungrateful. And Israel every Thursday brought tons of food into Gaza, truck after truck after truck. And this is what happens. They attack Israel because it's a religious thing with them. We live in a world where your kid cannot pretend to play Indian anymore. You can't pretend to be an Indian, but a man can pretend to be a woman. Let that sink in. And then remember, the Democrats said this spending bill will reduce inflation. If you believe that a $3.5 trillion spending bill will cost us nothing, then you are as dumb as they think you are.
And that's the bill, by the way, that Kamala Harris, she was the tie-breaking vote in the Senate for that bill.
Yes.
She's responsible for that. And that's one of the big causes of inflation. That was one of the big, that plus the energy, that plus the fact that they killed the energy industry.
Well, you know, that if archaeologists find human remains, they're either identified as male or female, not one of the other 700 genders we have today. And if your teacher and your students know your politics, you failed as a teacher. Let that sink in, because you are to teach people how to think, not to teach them how to think like you do. Here's another serious thing. If they can put a serial number on every dollar bill, not just dollars, but every bill, why can't they put a serial number on every ballot? I may be ancient, but I remember when we fought or arrested communists instead of electing them. And as Chaim said before, I had this on my list. Kamala Harris states she's going to fix things on day one. as Chaim said, why isn't she fixing them now? Biden is actually gone physically and mentally. She is next in line as the vice president. And then here's one we never mentioned. Kamala said she wants to help the middle class, but she wants to tax any realized gain. So if you have, say, 100 shares of stock, you paid $100, and they went up to 125. You didn't cash them in. You're waiting for them to go up more, hopefully. She's going to tax that $25 that you never realized. And then if you sell a stock at 75, you already paid taxes on that $25 gain. That alone should tell you what she's like.
By the way,
And then I've got something
just
a little I want to close with.
Just one other thing before you finish, before you get to the next point. You people there, if you have even a small amount of stocks or bonds, if you're in the bond market, the stock market, if you have a home, if she gets elected with her communist program, your property values will go down, your stocks will be lower. If you have a 401k, you will lose value on that. Your bonds will be lower. Everybody's going to lose out if she gets in. Everybody's going to lose out, except for the enemies of America. They're going to be the winners. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I have two more things. I wanted to ask Chaim his opinion. What if Trump gets elected? Now we're between Election Day and January 20th. Are they going to let him take office? What are they going to do to stop him? They keep saying they're going to stop him. He'll never take office. Are they going to assassinate him? Are they going to chase him out of the country? I don't know. What are they going to do?
No, I don't think so. I think they're going to have to let him take office. If something was done to him, then J.D. Vance would take over, and they don't like him either. So no, I think that the as much as they will hate it, it's one of the few pleasures I will get out of life. In 2016, I mean, I didn't like Trump, but obviously I thought he was better than the Democrats. But in 2016, I remember seeing the faces of the reporters. You know, there were reporters who started crying on the air when Trump won. They actually started crying. There were tears in their eyes when Trump won. Oh, I enjoyed seeing that. Those CNN animals and the MSNBC and the filthy, low, vile propagandists for everything that's evil in this world. Oh, how I love seeing them so upset, so aggravated. So they're going to have to face that. I mean, if Trump wins, they're going to be so upset.
You don't think they're going to burn cities down?
And hopefully they'll have a health problem because of it. I have to watch what I'm saying, but I hope that they have a health crisis because of that. The worse, the better. I wish them all the worst, all the bad things that can happen. I wish on them. They're evil. The media is evil. They're monsters. And they're programming death and destruction for good people. They're monsters. And one good thing about Trump, oh, he drives them crazy. And they will have to, he will take office and they'll have to accept, and they'll do everything they can to undermine his presidency, of course. They'll do
But you don't think they're going to burn cities down while he's waiting to take office?
No, because I think that would help him. I think if you had riots like that, that would make him more popular. So no, I don't think so. I remember there were riots in 1964 in the presidential election. Blacks were rioting, and Martin Luther King and the other black leaders said, "These are like Goldwater rallies. You're helping Barry Goldwater, the Republican candidate. You better stop this rioting." And polls showed, by the way, that all of a sudden support for Goldwater was going up. So they stopped the rioting because of that. There's certain things you can do that will backfire. And, you know, if they have riots against Trump, it's possible they might. Eventually when he takes office, they might. They may have riots when he's in the White House. I don't know. We'll see what happens. I hope that there's going to be a tough response to those riots if they do. I think if someone endangers people's lives, I think that the state troopers, police should have the authority to take those people out. If they're endangering people's lives, it's self-defense. I think people have a right to defend themselves. But I don't expect much anymore. I don't expect normal behavior anymore.
Well, I'm glad I live where I live, because when Black Lives Matter and some Antifa came up here in front of one of the saloons with the old, excuse me, with the old-fashioned wooden swinging doors, there was a whole bunch of guys dressed up in cowboy outfits, Civil War, North and South, banditos with the bandoliers of ammunition going around them and the Mexican hat. And they were armed to the teeth. And the police warned Black Lives Matter, you start trouble here. And we had snipers on the roofs. You start trouble here, and these people will shoot you. So I'm glad I moved here. This is one town that's still a little bit of America.
Well,
and I have one last thing that I just want to leave on a happy note. It's mostly for men, but women enjoy watching this guy too. His name is Vladimir Shimondenko. I think he's from Ukraine. He's a power weightlifter. He's not a bodybuilder. He's built, he's about 5'11", 5 feet 11 inches tall. He's only 190 pounds. But pound for pound, he's the strongest man in the world. He goes to gyms dressed in a disguise, and the management there goes along with him. And he's dressed as somebody cleaning. He's got a mop and a bucket. And these giant gorillas on steroids, they're all 6'4", 6'5", with 21-inch arms. They're doing deadlifts with 6 45-pound plates on each side. And he's asking in an accent, he exaggerates his accent. He has a slight accent. He says, I can clean here. And they say, sure, go ahead. And he takes the mop and he bangs into the weight. And it shows that he can't clean there. So he walks over and picks up the weight. Here's the skinny guy. And the gorillas are looking at each other like, this can't be. And then other times he will say, why you use fake weights? And he shows them the weight is plastic. And they say, that's not fake. And they may have 545, 645s on each side. And he will just deadlift it up and down, up and down, up and down like it weighs nothing. He said, see, I told you it was fake weight. So it's Anatoly on YouTube. I always watch his videos. He's very entertaining. There'll be women doing deadlifts with 245s on each side. And he'll pretend, he'll go, can I try? I can try. And they'll say, go ahead. And he'll pretend he can't lift it. Then he'll just take one hand and snap it up over his head. And the women they're looking in astonishment. I've seen him do 345s. That's 315 pounds. He just picks it up off the ground and in one motion holds it way over his head. I've seen him take barbells with 345s on each side, and he lifts it doing rowing as if it was a 45-pound dumbbell. But this is a 315-pound barbell. He's just amazing. And it's something you men should be interested in. And while you're watching him, I hope that makes you feel like it's time to get fit. I belong in a gym too. I am.
And, as long as you're ending off on that, I have to put in my little propaganda line. I have to put in my little propaganda about the need to do exercise. Because I agree with you. Of course, never use steroids or any drugs, ever. All natural, and never exaggerate. Don't do too much.
I never do. I've never even taken a protein shake.
I know that. No, I know. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking about in general. I do think sometimes you lift a little bit too much, though. I know.
Yeah, I lift very heavy because I don't take anything to assist my lifting. Hostess cupcakes, which I have every day, is not going to build big muscle.
That's the worst thing you could have. Remember, there are three things you want to do to live a long and healthy a life, or at least to increase your chances as much as possible. There are three things you want to do. I mean, I'm 68 years old, but there are three things I would recommend that people do and that studies have shown make the difference. Number one, only eat healthy food. Only. No cupcakes, none of that garbage. Only healthy food. That's number one. Number two, exercise. That's one good thing David does do. He does exercise, and he's very well built. He's very strong and very well built, and he does do exercise, and that's very good. Don't exaggerate. Don't overdo it, because you can hurt yourself. You really can hurt yourself.
Well, I
But
used to leg press 505, and it made it feel like your shins are coming into your thigh bone. So I cut it down to 415.
okay, well, very few people in our audience, I think, can do 415. But anyway, but I doubt it. But still, David is very strong. But still, you shouldn't exaggerate. You don't want to hurt yourself, but you want to do exercise. You want cardiovascular and other essential exercises, not only for your heart, but for your back, for your body. You want to keep the blood flowing well, and very important, exercise. So only eat healthy, do exercise. By the way, walking is very good for you. Doing a lot of walking. And
swimming uses every muscle in your body.
absolutely, swimming is also good for you. So eating healthy, exercise, and the third thing, try. I know it's not easy, but try to be as relaxed as you can and not to let the bad things get to you internally. I mean, you see me going off on all of these things, but I try not to let it get to me internally, because that's very dangerous. You don't want to get high blood pressure and other problems and your mind is very powerful and has a big effect on your health. Try to take things as calmly as you can. Do everything when we have problems in life, you want to do everything you can to solve the problem, and then leave the rest to God. Leave the rest to Hashem. Then you pray to Hashem to help you. As long as you've done everything you can, all you do is pray to Hashem to help you after that. That's what you should do. Remember, eating healthy, exercise, trying not to get nervous or overreact to events, because that can hurt your health as well. Those are three things that I think are good advice. In your heart, you know we're right. And in your guts, you know they're nuts. For J.T.F., until next week, this is Chaim Ben Pesach. Shalom.